one of us dies, there's a right of survivorship. Everything in that property, the entire interest goes to the surviving spouse. I still have a problem of now what to do with it at that spouse's death, because now there's no protection, right? There was only that other one person on title, and now they're on title alone. But a couple of interesting things with the difference between the community property and the joint tenancy. So I would a married couple favor a community property with right of survivorship over a joint tenancy. With the joint tenancy, at any time, any one of the parties can break the joint tenancy and thereby create it into a tenants in common instead, and can take their half, bifurcate it, and give it to anybody they want. I have people in my office all the time saying, it's a joint tenancy right now, but I want to take my half and put it into my trust, or take my half and deed it to my kids, or something like that. And the other joint tenant just has to abide by that. They don't even have to be notified. You just file the deed, you record it with the county, and you don't even have to tell the other joint tenant that you've actually separated it. It's now a tenants in common, right? It would be the nice thing to do, but it's not legally required. With a community property or community property with right of survivorship, if we're going to change title, both parties need to sign. Even though you own half of it, if you're going to change title of your half interest into a trust or to somebody else, the other owner needs to sign it. And so that would be one benefit of community property. The other difference between joint tenants and community property is the capital gains, right? You've got somebody here today who's going to help you exchange it, but not if it's your primary residence, right? When they sell a house, they're going to face capital gains on the difference between what it was worth on the day they bought it and what it was worth on the day they sold it, right? Okay. What happens if somebody's died? Oh, you guys have been reading, or you've come see me before, right? So, but how much is stepped up? So a stepped up basis says, if I inherit a property, my mom paid $10,000 for her house, now it's worth $1 million because she bought it 6 weeks ago, right? And if she dies and she gives it to me, she deeds or wills that to me, that my basis, my capital gain starting point in that house is what it was worth on her date of death. So it's $1 million, right? And so I'm not going to have to pay any capital gains if I sell it right away. All right. What if there's two people that own this house? It's a married couple, and we own it as joint tenants. My husband and I own this house as joint tenants. And same scenario, we bought it for $10,000, now it's worth $1 million, and he dies. What is my basis? Is it still the $10,000? Is it $1 million? Well, the answer is it depends. If it's joint tenancy, then only his half gets stepped up. So his half would go from a $5,000 basis, because it was half of the property, to $500. But my half is still back at $5,000, right? My half doesn't budge if it was a joint tenancy. So it's a nice benefit, but it's not as good as it could be. If you're not married, then your only choice is the joint tenancy. But if you're married, you can have community property with right of survivorship. And in a community property, both halves get stepped up. So if my husband died, my basis that was $10,000 now becomes $1 million. I get it appraised, I get the property appraised at his date of death, and whatever that value was, that's my new starting point, right? And so there could be a tremendous tax difference between a joint tenancy and a community property with right of survivorship. So if you have a married couple looking at that joint tenancy box and saying, well, that looks good, that looks like it's got pretty much everything I want, and they're about to check that one, they may want to get some tax advice, because with the rate of increase in value of properties around here, they could be sitting on a tremendous amount of capital gains, and that can be a huge benefit for the surviving spouse if one of them were to pass, right? So, any questions on any of that so far?
Yeah. Well, kind of a related question. How do you, if you have multiple heirs, assuming you did this community property with survivorship, how do you take into account Prop 13 so that whoever buys it gets the full value of the Prop 13? I understand there are potential problems if you have multiple heirs on there.
Right, so are you thinking about maybe I hold this property in a trust, right?
Yeah.
And so with community property survivorship, there's only ever 2 people on title at the initial outset. It's the husband and the wife, right?
Right.
So you're saying they both died, and now it's going to go to their 5 kids,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so how do the 5 kids take title to that?
Right.
So he's asking about Prop 13, right? Property tax reassessment. So I would have an exclusion if it was transferred between husband and wife. I would have an exclusion if it was transferred from parent to child. An unlimited exclusion if it's transferred from parent to child and it's the primary residence. $1 million worth of other property. But the interesting thing to know about the Prop 13 exclusion for other property, so maybe you've got a primary residence and a couple of investment homes, right? The $1 million exclusion is not the fair market value, it's the assessed value. So you get that little beige card from the assessor every year that tells him what he thinks your house is worth and what he's basing your taxes on. It's that value. It's not the fair market value, but assessed value. So what happens if I've got 5 kids? If I leave everything equally to the 5 kids, they each take 1/5 of the house, then it's no problem. The property taxes are not reassessed. But you're asking a question maybe where one of the kids says,
I'll buy it.
I like that house, I want it, I'm going to take it. I'm going to buy out the other 4,
Right.
right?
Exactly.
Well, now I have a property tax problem because the 20% I got from mom and dad, no property tax reassessment because that was a parent-to-child transfer. All right, good. The 20% I bought from my brother, my other brother, my other brother, or however many brothers there are, there is no qualifying relationship there, right? And so potentially those are going to be reassessed. So we have a couple of options. None of them are fantastic, but there's a couple of things you can do. One is the parents, if they know that child wants that house in the trust, they could say that house goes to Linda. But if they don't have a lot of other assets to give to the other 5, a lot of times they say, well, I want everything to be fair. That doesn't feel fair, right? I'm not just going to give it to her because she raised her hand first and says, I'll take it, right? And so it works okay in a family where there's a lot of other assets. There's plenty of other cash. I have a lot of liquidity. And I'm still only ending up with my 20%, but I say, well, I'll take the house, you guys take all the money, right? And so that still works. The Santa Clara County says, that's okay. All of California says, that's all right, as long as you didn't get more than your 20% allotment, right? You can declare, I'll take the house, and you can have a full property tax exclusion for that. What if there's not anything else in the house? All they had, that's all mom and dad had was the house. They were house rich, cash poor, right? There's something that people have been doing. It's not officially, you won't find it codified anywhere. There's no, right, law on the books or regulations. There was an opinion letter put out by California that says, yeah, it'll probably work. We're going to have to look at each one of these on a case-by-case basis, but go ahead and roll the dice on that and see how it fares out, which is that the kids could go mortgage the house before it ever distributes, right? So it's still in the estate, it's still in the trust. And they say, go mortgage that house. Take out an $800,000 loan against that house, right? And so now what does the trust own? Now the trust owns $1 million house with an $800,000 debt on it and $800,000 cash. And so now I have enough liquidity. Give me the house that's encumbered and give the money to everybody else, right? A couple of logistical problems with that, which is the trust doesn't have any money, and I'm going to go to a bank and say, gee, can I have $800,000 or $600,000 or however much it is? These third-party lenders, these loans are hard to get, right? They're going to be expensive. That rate is going to be ridiculously high. This is not a loan you're going to want to keep for any amount of time. It's just to be able to complete the transaction, get the property out of the trust into my name, and then I should immediately go refinance it under my own name, right? And so I've had it work for a couple of clients. I've had a couple of clients who did it. There was a condo in Sunnyvale. The one kid said, I'll take it, but there wasn't enough other liquidity. And he went to, I think it was Dytech, and got a mortgage. And boy, that thing was expensive. And the rate was like 12%. And he said, it's okay, I need it for like 60 days, right? And then we infused the trust with cash. and then we distributed the cash to the other people. He took the condo in Sunnyvale, and then he went and refinanced it. And it worked. And Santa Clara County approved that assessment re-exclusion.
Awesome.
I just wanna say I've been a lender to those kinds of loans.
Yeah,
And they're great if you have some money sitting there that's collecting 1%, you get a lot more, like you said. It works.
I mean, this isn't gonna be your 30-year, right? Like, what kind of rates?
I got 9%
Oh,
of my
okay.
money for 3 months.
I should have sent my guy over to you.
Yeah.
You gotta take it for 12, right? Because the problem is, who's borrowing that money? It's not the kids, it's the trust. And they say, well, what kind of income does the trust have? Well, it doesn't have any. All we have is this house that mom and dad were living in, and so it can be problematic. So a lot of times it'll depend on the case-by-case basis. What other assets are in the trust? Is there anything else? What kind of loan to value are we looking at on the house? Am I only looking to borrow 20%, or am I looking to borrow 80%, right? And so there's some options, but none of them are codified where I say, oh, look at code section 125, we're gonna do this. It's like, okay, here's what we're gonna try, and you've gotta let your client know, okay, well, we're gonna give this a whirl, but there's no guarantee. You might end up, right, the county saying, no, we're gonna reassess it, and then you've gotta roll it back and say, never mind, right? Or sell it, right?
So I guess I got very confused. So this is based on the property tax?
That's correct.
Yeah.
So the assessment was based on the equity rather than the assessed value?
It was based on the assessed value, but the problem is that there are 5 kids,
Each one owns.
and each one owns 20%. And so the share that I took from mom and dad, which is exempt from the exclusion, was only 20%.
Okay.
Then I said, hey, brother, do you want your share? He says, no. I said, great, I'll buy you out. But now what? Now I'm going to have a property tax reassessment for the share that I'm buying from my brother, because there's no exclusion for that. There's no qualifying relationship. And so if the money had a bunch of cash, I would just say, or the trust had a bunch of cash, I would just say, well, all right, I'll keep the house, you keep the cash, they're the same amount, and so everybody's happy, and we each got the same amount at the end of the day. We just took it in different form, right? But if the trust has no cash, now what do? We have to somehow infuse the trust with cash.
You can't record the trust deeds in their names and then fill it in at the time of death. You have to actually transfer the title to one of them. You know what I'm saying?
I do not know what you're saying. So, if I'm being perfectly honest. So you're saying that, so has anybody died yet?
If somebody died, if
Okay.
one died, okay, and you knew one of the kids wanted to buy the place,
Okay,
why couldn't you just record with the trust, blank trust deeds, and then fill them in for the other 4?
so you want me to sign and notarize a blank deed that's gonna be filled in later? If you can find an attorney and a notary willing to do that, God bless you, but I don't think that's gonna happen.
Well, I asked a question, all you could say is no.
All right. Yes,
Can't you just state language in the trust documentation beforehand, like your heirs, your children can do some kind of voting, and if one wants to take all of it, then we'll bequeath everything to that one person?
yes, right? So I could say, so in the trust, you could say, right, if Bobby wants the house, then go ahead and give him the house. But now it means that the other 4 legally would take nothing, and there would have to be a lot of trust in that family for the other kid to say, hey, after I get the house, I'll finance it, I'll take a loan, and I'll kick you back some money, right?
Yeah.
Now, if there was property, and there's other property, and there's a ton of cash, then yes, I could say, okay, this house goes there, and this house goes there, and this house goes over there, that's fine. But if you're trying to make an equal distribution, but I only have one physical asset, it becomes a little more difficult.